So on today's show, we have Mr. Wayne Jacks with Haystack Dryers. But man, we get into all sorts of things revolving around the amusement park business, even movie theaters in Great Britain and the Great Britain, the London Eye. So if you see that big Ferris wheel in London, our guest today had something to do with that, a lot to do with that as well. And we even get to a lot of other things like crypto. Just the conversation had a lot of different fun turns. So you're in for a good one here today.
From the business capital of the world, the Big Apple, New York's Middle Tennessee, it says here. Sounds riveting. This is the Mostly Middle Tennessee Business Podcast, a podcast about Middle Tennessee business owners and professionals. Mostly.
That's right. Thank you, Mr. Matt Wilson from the Mostly Marketing Podcast. Check his podcast out. He was so nice to lend his voice to the Mostly Middle Tennessee Business Podcast and create a really cool intro out of it. This is the Mostly Middle Tennessee Business Podcast, where we talk to Middle Tennessee business owners, entrepreneurs, and professionals about anything. It's a meandering conversation. It's a real conversation, of course, with a start and an end and all that fun stuff, and somewhat of a timeline that we deviate from and find our way back to. This is a video and audio podcast. You can pick your poison if you want to watch us or find a platform that makes the most sense to you or tell somebody about it. Check us out at MMTBP.com. I am your host, Jim McCarthy, with JimMcCarthyVoiceovers.com, and it's your show.co, where we produce fine podcasts like this one. We've got about 13 or 14 in production at the moment. So you go there, you might be able to find one and tap into our network, so to speak. A lot of really cool ones out there. And today, we're going to be talking a lot about a concept that's kind of emerged in the past couple of years called not entrepreneurship, but intrapreneurship, where you're kind of in charge of your own, think of like, dare I say, a car salesman, which I was at one point in time. You're responsible for getting your own business, and you're you have the ability to build your own business within the confines and structures of a business. They handle all the back office, the inventory, things of that nature. So mortgage people, real estate agents kind of come to mind. But in this case, Mr. Wayne Jacks, welcome, sir.
Hello, how are you?
Was that too long of an intro, man?
I was long for the ride. That was good.
I meander, you know. And you are with, remind me again, the name of the company. It's not something, because you and I met not too long ago around Halloween.
Yeah, we met in a random elk lodge somewhere, and I think
I was smoky Elks Lodge.
Yeah, I was dressed as Scooby-Doo, and
right.
It's one of those things I wonder sometimes how I get in these places.
You know, you and I we conversed. You're dating a very good friend of ours. She's actually been a guest on the show too. I want to say probably about a year ago now, maybe a little over a year. And Sherry Hildreth. And basically, we just started talking about all things lighting, and you told me a bit about what you do, which is essentially, and forgive me, I forgot the name of the company, but you essentially, if you're at an amusement park and you go down on one of the water rides, you can get dried off.
Whatever floats your boat.
Right, by your product. You can get your entire family completely dry in one of your machines.
Yes, I work for a company called Haystack Dryers, and we make the machines that you see them pretty much at every theme park in the country. We operate in 30-something countries, so we're all over the world. But these machines, they fit about 5 people inside. We typically say 5 people or 4 Americans. I'm allowed to say that because I'm American now.
Right.
You're
not wrong there. I mean, we have been getting larger.
There are trends.
Yeah.
You put your whole family in there, and most theme parks charge to use the service, and the family will jump in. Depending on what you're wearing, you can either come out 3 minutes later completely dry, but if you're wearing 12 layers and you've just jumped out of a pool, you're going to come out mostly dry.
Right.
It's an interesting concept. We're pretty much the only people in the world that do it. There have been a few that have tried to copy, but yeah, we've pretty much been doing it since 2000, and I launched the US arm of the business in 2007.
Yeah,
and so that was a couple of years to get that get that rolling here and get some traction. And yeah, it's been a wild ride, that's for sure.
You're not originally from here, obviously.
What gives it away?
Something.
Okay.
It's probably your physique. You definitely European physique, because you guys have all the good food over there. That's not compromised chemically.
Oh, I tell you, yes, food is one of my biggest enemies. But yes, I'm from a little town outside of London, a little town called Harlow, which is in a county called Essex. So anybody that knows Essex knows the jokes about Essex boys and Essex girls.
Yeah, that's a song.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I think so. I can't think of the song now, but it's like an 80s song.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
We are an interesting bunch of people, for sure. But yeah, I left there in about 2007, moved to the US, and like I said, I kind of launched the business here in the US with the guidance, kind of the entrepreneurship as you were discussing earlier. So the owner of the business wanted to grow in the US, and I had previously worked in the industry in London. Somebody connected us, and he said,
the human dryer industry or the amusement park industry?
No, well, weird story. So I used to be a commercial operations manager at the London Eye, the big wheel on the Thames. Yeah. So I did that from before it opened. I was one of the opening team and got that business up and running and open. And I was an operator there until about 2006.
It's funny to think that something like that is a business. You would figure it would be owned by the city or something.
Yeah, well, it was a really weird partnership because it was supposed to only be a 5-year deal. That it was supposed to be there to celebrate the millennium. And then there was the architects were one of the partners. British Airways was a partner, really the sponsor for it.
Yeah.
And then Merlin Entertainments, which was at the time the Tussauds Group, they were in, Madame Tussauds Waxworks, places like that. The theme parks in the UK, they're all kind of under that same banner. So it was a 3-way partnership between them, and they owned, operated, worked with the city, did that for 5 years. And then towards the end of that 5-year tenure, they managed to get another 25-year extension. Mm-hmm. So then it became one of the, like a permanent skyline, a marker on the skyline.
It's part of the skyline for sure.
Yeah, and it's changed hands a few times since then. The funny thing is the management has changed many times, but it's typically people that I worked with there 20-something years ago.
Still the same.
If I go back, it's a different person is now in charge, but they would have left, gone to a different industry, lived in different countries, and they've gone back and now they're in charge.
That's crazy.
So the guy that is in charge there now, actually, he worked with me as one of the opening managers way back when.
So you were in charge of opening that thing, or at least part of the team.
Yeah, I ran the retail photo operation, all the fun ancillary stuff there where the ticket sales is where the main money came, but the ancillary revenue is where the profit kind of came from. So that was kind of my remit. There was a team of us doing it. It wasn't just me. There was a team of us.
And it was one of those things that for the Millennium New Year, they wanted that up and going. That was kind of the big emergence of it, the announcement.
Yeah, it was supposed to be in 2000 that it was going to open. They never really specified that it was going to open for the Millennium. And, it's very well publicized, the delays towards the construction. I mean, just even trying to lift the thing up. I mean, it was never been done before. It was a brand new design. It was a massive feat of engineering. It still is now. If you go to see it, in the middle of London, there's a height cap along the Thames of how you can build, and 500 feet is the height cap.
Right.
And the London Eye is almost to that.
Oh my gosh.
And so when you see it, it's only being held from one side, so it's cantilevered out over the Thames. So there's nothing underneath it apart from water. The platform that you get onto it is essentially floating. And it was a challenge. There were so many challenges to that and issues during the opening period. But it actually opened on schedule. It opened in March of 2000, which was always supposed to open in March 2000. But the publicity around the failures, which there were no real failures because actually the expected visitors to the attraction were supposed to be around 2 million a year, and we were getting 4 million a year.
Oh, wow.
So the space that we had, the staff that we had, the operating budget that we had were based on 2 million visitors, and then all of a sudden we've got double that, and where do you put these people, and how do you manage that many people? And it was chaos.
That's a lot of corralling.
It was amazing. It was. I still have nightmares about queues or lines, as you call them here in America. Yeah. Lines still freak me out to this day. If I get to an airport, I'm telling you, I stare at every line, I study it, I know which one's going to move the quickest, and I can't relax until I'm at the very front because I can't let my guard down. That was years of being punished by millions of people in lines. In part of the land that we had in London at the time, we had to move people across public right of way to get them onto the London Eye. So we had an area that we had, which Jubilee Gardens is what it's called, and we had a small area, and we were trying to get 1,500 to 2,000 people an hour onto this Ferris wheel.
Oh my gosh.
And you've got to ferry them across a public walkway, but also you need to have a constant flow of people, and you have a 30-minute or so wait to get on. So you've got to manage at any one time, really, there was 800 to 1,000 people milling around, and you've got to keep them under control and flowing and get them on and get them off with no problems.
And basically keep track of who's been on, how many rotations, how many RPMs would you get out of it if you paid for a ride?
So you'd get one go around. It would be 30 minutes.
Oh, really?
So you would hop on, it's each capsule would hold 28 people.
Oh, really? That many?
Oh, yeah. It's small.
It's massive.
It's hard to describe. Essentially, it's the size of this room, which is, doesn't really translate well for podcasts. But
Right.
Size of this room. But yeah, it's comfortable. There's a bench in the middle. You wander around. It's air conditioned. It's all glass all the way around. It was fun. It was a wild time in my life. It was amazing. The stuff that I saw and experienced in that
I can only imagine.
time. I mean, there were stuff that never hit the press that I probably should never talk about, but there's some stuff that went down. We had stuff that did hit the press. We had protesters climb that thing a few times. One guy dressed as Spider-Man, climbed to the top of it, and I don't know how he did that because he almost fell off a few times.
So that thing is pretty much in constant motion.
Correct.
You get people out of the capsule and onto in the space of however long it takes to get on that surface area.
Yes.
The landing area, I guess, if you will.
We essentially had around 40 seconds to get 28 people off and 28 people on.
Wow.
And it never stopped. The only time it stopped was for ADA access, essentially. So wheelchairs. But yeah, no, it was fun. We learned a lot. I started there in my early 20s.
Yeah.
And the whole team of us were in our early 20s.
Does your garage door sound like this? If it does, it's screaming for help. Call Incredible Doors, 931-348-DOOR. We're making garage doors in Murray and Williamson counties work better, sound better, and, spring better. We just make them incredible again. Incredible Doors in Spring Hill. When your doors springs break, you need remote reconnections, opener installation, or just about anything to do with your garage door. Go to IncredibleDoors.com or call 931-348-DOOR. Follow us on Facebook for specials on maintenance visits, keypads, and other items. 931-348-DOOR.
So it's kind of like your first job out of college, university, as you guys would say.
Yeah, if I went, it probably would have been. But.
Right. If you had gone to university.
Yeah.
So early 20s, you're getting into this very high profile, almost experimental type of situation. And that was the late 90s. I mean, because they had to build this thing. Must have happened in the late 90s.
Yeah, essentially, I in the mid 90s, I was managing movie theaters. So I managed a movie theater. I was 18, and I was managing the biggest movie theater in London, which was again that was an interesting experience. There was a lot of hours and no pay. And if anybody has worked in a movie theater, they can understand that as well. You'll do 100 hours a week, and you'll get paid nothing for it, essentially.
Yeah, it's almost like a passion play type of industry.
Yeah, and it was one of those things where you were almost too exhausted to get out of it. You really would do 100 hours, and you would not have the energy to think about anything outside of the industry because you have so much to think about and do. And back then, we didn't have digital projectors. We would have film on film.
Yeah.
And as a manager of the movie theater, I had 12 screens, and sometimes my projectionist wouldn't come in, and a new movie was about to drop, and I've got these pallets of films that have just arrived, and so I had to learn how to do that. So I'd put the films together, and then I'd have to stay till 3 a.m. and watch them through and make sure that I put them together correctly.
Right.
So that was an interesting experience. And then when in my early 20s, like I said, I think I was about 22, and 99, I was 22. And that's when someone asked me, hey, do you want to come work for the London Eye? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. So the team that I went to work with, like I said, the majority of us were around the same age group. There were a couple of us that are older, but
Yeah.
It was wild to be in London in the late 90s, launching what was going to become an icon, which we didn't know at the time. And the experiences that went along with it, it was one of the greatest times of my life.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's funny, in the movie theaters, it's kind of one thing that intrigues me about it is the notion when I got in the radio, a lot of commercials would be delivered to us on reel-to-reel. Dare I say similar to a movie, right? You have to have your take-up reel and stuff like that. Did they ever do heads out or tails out? Was that indicated on the boxes? Was that a thing?
No. But what was indicated on the boxes never actually really what was in the boxes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there were times that actually I can tell you this story now because nobody cares anymore. But I remember when The Matrix came out,
mm-hmm.
and somebody had mangled about 2 minutes of The Matrix,
mm-hmm.
and when I came to put the film together, there was just film that had just been absolutely destroyed, and
really?
So I had to cut 2 minutes of The Matrix.
So you were actually editing the movie.
Apparently,
you had to.
It was just the way, like, people want to see it, and I've got the film, and I can't get a new one for another day or two. So all I could do was there literally was about 2 minutes of that film.
Did you have a cutting block and a grease pencil and all that
I
stuff?
had all that stuff.
Really?
Oh yeah,
Oh my gosh!
I used to sit there, and if it would be like I said, 2 a.m, my projectionist's not there. I've got to put this film together, ready to be shown the next day.
What do you mean by put it together? Are you actually assembling different parts of the film to a bigger reel?
Yes.
Really?
Back then, essentially, they would come in 6, 7, 8 different reels.
Oh, really? Okay.
And so what you would have to do is you would get from corporate office, they would send you what ads need to be run.
Right.
So you would splice all the ads together. And then you would put those to the side as your ad pack ready to go. Mm-hmm. And then obviously the trailers, you would have to cut out the trailers. Each week that would change. So you'd have to take the trailers out, cut them out, put them back together again.
Totally analog.
All analog.
That's crazy.
And then you would sit there, and once you put the film together, you've got to look for bad perforations along
mm-hmm.
the edge of the film. So you would run this film, which, the platter of a film, when it's laid flat, a platter of a film is probably 6 feet diameter.
Wow.
I mean, it's big. Maybe even bigger, actually. Certainly when it came to things like Titanic, they were huge. We maxed out the capacity of the platters that they sit on. But once you've put the film together, you've got to run that film between your fingertips the whole way through the film to feel for bad perforations. And when you feel a bad perforation, and joints as well, but if you feel a bad perforation, that thing will take a chunk out your fingers because it's running high speed. So you have to wind these films at high speed through your fingertips, and you're literally holding the film in your hand. And then you find bad perforations, and a bad perforation will just rip the film in the projector.
Right.
So you would then have to find it, cut it out, grease fence it, stick it together, recut it together, put it back on the reel again.
So it was one of those things like, oh, we got a bleeder.
Yes.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, and then
I never knew.
And then the projectors that we use at the time, which, again, now it's all digital, but back then you would have these xenon lamps in them. And you're in the lighting industry, you understand. But these,
very hot light.
Very hot light. Yeah. But you would have to wear bomb-proof gear to take them out because those suckers would explode. Yeah. And when they exploded big.
You had to wear gloves that you didn't get any fingerprints on them.
Oh,
at all.
Yeah. You know what welders wear? Like, essentially, you're wearing the thick leather overalls, gloves that go the way up to your shoulders, the face mask.
Who knew?
And you're taking these things apart. And again, you're like me, 18. Yeah. You've just worked 20-something hours. The last thing you want to do is you've just been called out because somebody burgled the place in the middle of the night to steal candy. Right. You've not slept in a week, and then you're having to change one of these lamps in bomb gear, and you're thinking, what? Why am I getting paid like $2 an hour to do this job? Like, this is crazy.
Because somebody took it. That's why.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Because you said yes.
Yes, exactly. You've got to pay your dues. And when you're in your late teens and you're starting a career, you just think, well, this will set. This would give me a path.
Dude, I'm like fascinated about hearing this. I never knew that about. That's what a projectionist did. I always thought maybe they had two projectors side by side that you'd toggle. One would wind out, you'd start the next one, because I always heard that there was a little signal that would come up in the movie that would signal the guy, okay, time to start the next one.
Yeah, that was back in the old days.
Was it?
Oh,
okay.
Yeah. So the way that it would work is you would have to go and we call it lacing the projector. So you would feed the film through what we would call the guts or the brains, but essentially it's in the middle of the platter. So the films feed from the middle out.
Yeah.
So you would feed the film through the middle of the platter. Also, this is really weird. I have not thought about this in probably 20 years. So you feed the film out, then you have to run it up around like almost halfway through the room, down into the projector, through the projector. You've got to be very precise on how it's laced. You've got to get the framing just right. You've got to give it enough room because then the film flicks and it's a trick of the light and the way it does the fun stuff. Back out through the bottom projector and then back onto another platter afterwards.
Yeah. Take a reel.
So it goes reel to reel through the projector. So at the end of the film, it would essentially buzz to tell you that it's turned off and the film's finished, and a light will come on, and then you have to go and then you have to check it, make sure everything's okay, clean out the projector, rewrap the film through, set a countdown timer for it to start again to start at the time of the next show. But each time you do this, you're doing, I don't know, maybe it takes you 5-10 minutes to do it, probably longer. But we had 12 screens. And on each screen, you had 2 different films essentially loaded to go on each screen. Because in the daytime, you'd have kids' films, and nighttime, you'd have adults' films.
Right.
And one projectionist would run around doing all 12 screens, all of these films. In the middle of doing that, you would have to make up the next film, make up the next projectors, repair the projectors if there's a problem with them, take parts, you have spares that you have to take apart, clean out, put back together again. Break down last week's films, put them back into their real cases, ship them off to the supplier. It was just that aspect. And that was just one tiny bit. You know, I wasn't a projectionist, but I had to know how to do it. And we had a couple of months where we couldn't get a projectionist. So I ended up spending a couple of months up there, and you don't see the light of day. You're just in darkness.
Right.
You get there in the morning before the sun comes up, and you leave at night once the sun goes down, and the whole day long you're in a dark tunnel. It's a miserable existence.
And the funny thing is like, what makes people want to do this? Is this the passion of being part of the industry?
Well, the projectionists that we had, they were all massive movie buffs. And the biggest draw was poster day. When the movie theater, the production companies would send out the posters, and it was the projectionist's job to catalog them. And only half of them would ever make it to the catalog
because they're taking them.
Oh yeah. And it's kind of one of those things where, well, yeah, they work hard and they do whatever, and there's enough up on the walls. It's all good. But if you ever go on these collectors' websites for movie posters, I guarantee they're all coming from projectionists.
Yeah, that's how they're making their money. It's their side hustle.
It's a passion.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure. And the funny thing to me is that you had to edit the entire movie together, so the whole thing would run through from the large platter. And then, sometimes 6 reels together. That in and of itself, did you do that in the actual projection room? Was there a special room for that?
No, all in the projection room.
Wow.
And it's just, like I said, it's just one long corridor.
Yeah.
And it's noisy, it's dark, it's not dusty. It has to be kept clean, of course, for the film. Right. But it's a wild experience. The long hours and how lonely it would get up there, it felt very strange. It's not a natural existence. Now, obviously, it's very different today because today is it's all computers, and I'm sure the projectionists still work very hard, but I'm sure they walk up and down, they make sure that the brightness is correct, all the other settings. Yeah,
but at that point, it was probably hitting a space bar and letting it roll off of an MP4 file or something.
Exactly. And I'm sure they're not doing like we did, which sometimes we would accidentally. What was the film? There was a kids' film that came out. I'm trying to remember what it was now, but it was something really innocuous and all full of 4 or 5-year-olds in the movie theater. And I remember our projectionist, it may have even been me, but I can't remember. I know I was working that day. But our projectionist put on Halloween H2O instead. So we had like 300 4-year-old kids sat in a screen, and then parents would come running out screaming that the opening scene of the film was like someone getting an ice pick through their head or something.
Right.
That's never a good thing.
That's the kids' movie, guys. Just, this is what it is.
That's what they want.
We're trying to accelerate their childhood.
Give them what they want.
Exactly. And it's funny because had the analog to digital transition not happened, my career in radio would have been much different. Because I learned how to splice tape and do all that, a lot of the stuff on the fly, making radio commercials or imaging for radio stations. But once it became digital, it was like, oh, game over. This is so much more efficient. Yeah, I'm not sure if my life would have looked a lot different.
Yeah, I found as I've gotten older, because I'm a big tech guy. Like, I love technology, absolutely love it. But as the older I get, I'm 47 now, and as I age, I realize that I miss analog things. So I incorporate analog now into my life as much as possible.
Really?
So I know email, workflow has to be digital. I mean, for the most part, I purposefully, if I need to have an hour-long meeting with somebody or a 30-minute long meeting with somebody, and generally you can do most things over Zoom or Skype, I would much rather spend a day traveling to that person.
Yeah.
And meet them face to face.
That's how I see it with this podcast. I can do it on Zoom with a lot of different people, but I don't want to. And some people will say, well, we'd love to do it on Zoom. I wouldn't. I'm right here in town. It's a Tennessee-based podcast. If you want on, here's where I am.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, there's the old saying of pressing the flesh. There is something about getting to know somebody, getting to know their family, getting to know their history. The 5 minutes before the meeting and the 5 minutes after the meeting are so much more valuable than the meeting itself.
It really is.
And the relationships you build in that time last years beyond whatever project you're working on.
So you get to the point where somebody sees the potential in you and says, hey, we got a project, come over to the London Eye. Oh my gosh, what an opportunity. You spend 5 or 6 years there.
Yeah, it was just about 7 actually, yeah.
And then somebody else sees your potential and says, hey, you'd probably be good. And I guess was the owner of the company.
Well, there was a little stepping stone in between. So like I said, one of my projects at the London Eye was running the ride photography department. So, when those really annoying things where you go on a ride and you get flashed as you go around and it takes your picture. So I managed the contract at the London Eye on the London Eye's behalf, but the company that supplied the photo system and ran the photo system, I ended up going to work for those guys. Right. So I left London. I knew I was moving to America. My first wife was from here. So we'd been married in London for years. She'd had enough of the weather in London, wanted to move back to Middle Tennessee. Yeah. So I knew my green card was coming, and this company, the Ride Photography Company, they had an office here in the US, and they said, hey, why don't you come work for us? You can consult for us for the next year until you move to the States. I had some wild experiences with those guys. Like I traveled all over the world for them looking for opportunities. I spent a lot of time in China for those guys. This is back before the Olympics in 2008. So China was really going through some changes back then. Yeah. It was a very difficult place to be, actually. Got kidnapped by the police one time when I was there. And, certainly was being followed by agents the whole day. They were suspicious of the Westerners in town. Almost got set on fire at one point by somebody. Like it was a bonkers time period. But I did that for a while. And then when I moved to the States, the guy that ran the US office for the Ride Photography Company, they didn't particularly want the British spy working here in the US reporting back to head office because it's a British company. And so he kind of refused to employ me. So I moved here with a job offer. And then when I got here, there was no job offer.
Right.
So that's when I did a little bit more consultancy. And then that's when I was connected with the owner of the people dryer company, Haystack Dryers. And he just said, hey, do you want to, let's meet. So I flew to London. I met up with him. We had lunch one day and we got on, and he said, well, let's do a couple of trade shows, see how that goes. And I know you've done IAPA, the International Association of Amusement Parks and Attractions. Mm-hmm. So we did that show. It was a good success. We saw potential. And so I essentially worked for 6 months for free. I said, look, let me see what I can do. Mm-hmm. So in 6 months, at the end of the 6 months, I said, look, it's going to take more time, but there's definitely potential. Let's come up with a plan. And so that's kind of when I jumped in. I guess 6 months before I'd really jumped in, but jumped in full force and came on board. And the rest is kind of history. My first actual US customer was Dollywood. Oh, wow. And the people at Dollywood are amazing. And that park is one of my favorite parks in the country by far. Never been. Oh, it's honestly, I feel like it's a bit of a sleeper park. If you like theme parks and you've never been to Dollywood, it will blow your mind. Really? It's a beautiful park. I don't know if it's the same now, but when they were my customer, they said that the average age of their employees across the entire theme park was 60. Oh, wow. So you go to any other theme park in the country and the average age of employee is probably about 18. Yeah. And there it's 60. And it showed. Like the people there cared about their jobs. They loved the park. They loved where they lived. They were all from Gatlinburg or Sevierville. It's such a beautiful atmosphere for a park. Not only is it, it's a different age, but certainly a different generation. Correct. 18-year-olds in a theme park,
they're making some memories in their lives that are going to last the rest of their life with the people that they work with. I'm sure, after hours, they have a bunch of fun, but they don't really take the job all that seriously. And you see it, I guess, in a lot of parks these days. That would be interesting to see people older working rides and doing that kind of a thing. I never thought about that as a concept.
Yeah,
that would make a difference.
It completely changes the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I spend most of my time in parks like Universal or Cedar Fair parks or now Six Flags parks or SeaWorld parks. They're all my customers, and so I try to get out at least a couple of times a month, hit the road for a few days at least. And when I say hit the road, I mean I'll leave my house at 3 a.m. and I probably won't sleep for 2 days, and I want to cram as much in as possible, see as many people as possible. So I remember, I think it was just probably about a month ago, I left my house here in Nashville. I flew to Tampa, and I started in Tampa, and I drove across Florida, and I stopped. And Florida's great because, there are so many parks there. And I ended up seeing 9 different theme parks in one day. So
Wow.
That was starting in Nashville, finishing up in Orlando, 9 different theme parks in one day, meetings at every single one of them, seeing my customers, just making sure they're happy, make sure everything's good. It was a little bit after the storm, actually. We had the couple of hurricanes that came through back to back, and I just wanted to make sure everything was okay. Everyone said that it was fine, but I just wanted to get my boots on the ground and just let them know that, hey, if there's any problems, I'm going to tackle it here and now. So my engineering department, they're all in the UK.
Yeah.
So although I'm not an engineer, I know what I'm doing, roughly. All right, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So when I travel, I take tools with me, always. So even if it's a business meeting, I'm in a suit or whatever, and I've got a corporate meeting with corporate directors, I will have a toolkit in my bag, and I'll wander through the park and I'll look at my equipment. And if I see anything that could potentially be wrong, or thing that, any maintenance that needs to be done that hasn't been flagged, I'll just take care of it there and then, because otherwise, I've got to pay for a team of engineers to fly from the UK. I've got to book their time. It could take me weeks to do it and cost me, $5,000-$10,000, or I can just take a toolkit with me and do it myself.
Right.
So that's what I like to do. So
is it just a tool bag of stuff, or is it small? Is it like something you got like a cart?
Pretty much just a tool bag of small, just a very small toolkit that generally I carry on with. But if there's anything more, certainly for Florida, for example, I keep a lockup in Florida. I keep a storage unit down there where I keep lots of spares, and I keep larger tools just in case there are any other issues or any serviceable items that I don't carry with me. My dryers have these infrared lamps in them. I'm not going to carry a large infrared lamp with me because they'll just get smashed. Yeah. So I keep a store of them down there. We use HEPA filters to clean the air that blows onto people. We have UV sterilization systems. We have, all this cool technology that you wouldn't think of that's in this machine, plus bespoke custom-made heaters and blowers and fans and a variety of other control methods inside. So I generally keep a lot of that stuff in situ, centrally where most of my customers are.
Right. And
then if it's anything else in the country, I can just, I also have a lot of this stuff at home, and I'll just grab it, throw it in a box, either ship it or in a suitcase and fly out and take care of what I can when I can.
How do you get into the parks? Is it just through a maintenance entrance?
Yeah.
It's got to be great. I'm just going to walk in. Here's my badge.
Yes. That is a bit of a trip. It really messes with your head a little bit because firstly, I don't ride roller coasters. That's not my thing at all. I've had lots of my spine replaced and disc replacements and fusions and whatever else. So riding a roller coaster is not a fun day for me at all. But if I go up to a theme park, and typically it's the employee entrance, and you can even find it. I can just look at a map, just Google Earth it. I can look at a theme park, and I can tell just by looking at the Google Earth maps exactly where the employee entrance is. It's the same everywhere. Mm-hmm. It's always the nondescript parking lot that has trailers and shipping containers just stacked up outside. Well, that's where I have GPS. I'll just go there. Yeah. And typically you show up, and I would say 90% of the parks are great as far as you show up, and unless you've got an appointment or you've got a badge or you're on the contractors list, you're not getting in. Yeah. But there are some where you just pull up and, you look like you should be there, and you just wave and smile at the security guard, and you just get waved through.
Yeah.
And that blows my mind. It doesn't happen much anymore, but when it does happen, I'm like, wow, that's interesting.
Back in my phone installation days, my dad had a business that did like PBX phone systems, and they were huge in the 80s and 90s. If you could have a butt set hanging off your tool belt, that guaranteed a ticket anywhere. Backstage, concerts, anything.
High-vis vest, that's the same thing.
Pretty much. Carry a ladder.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Little hard to pack those in your carry-on, but
right.
It's getting into the box is actually pretty easy as long as you're on the list, you can come in.
Yeah.
And like you said, I have passes for as far as employee ID cards for most of the theme parks in the country. I just go up and show my badge, and so I carry a stack of my ID cards. But the fun part is when you're in the park at 4 o'clock in the morning and you're the only one there.
Yeah.
And you're wandering through Hogwarts. And and again, it's the theming doesn't change. You're still within this magical world of Harry Potter. You know, you're stood in this amazing place, and you're the only person there.
You come across the YouTubers that have stuck around to try and stay under the radar from the security, so they can record a night. You know, hey, we stayed after they closed, and how long can we go, and all that stuff.
Yeah,
you ever see those videos?
I've seen those. I know there's not quite so many of those anymore. I think they've got way better at their security for keeping an eye on them. The ones that always blew my mind were the ones at Disney where they would get on the boat and they would sail. They would row over to the abandoned island, the secret park that was only open for a really short period of time. And apparently the music is still playing and the attractions are still there, and it's supposed to be super creepy.
Yeah.
I don't know how much of that is actually true.
I don't know, man. Is Disney one of your clients?
They're not. No, not currently. They have been, and I hope they will be in the future. There's definitely challenges working within the Disney world. I need to obviously be very careful about what I say.
Sure.
But I will say that Imagineering and theming are top priority there.
Yeah.
And
so if you sell your machines, it's got to be their specs. You got to make it look like a pumpkin or something, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always fit into the theme because, it's a guest service versus a themed element. And although they can theme it, doesn't always match perfectly with what the Imagineers would have in mind.
You ever come across being the fact that Disney has got such a heavy technology, technological infrastructure, and doing what they do with the Imagineers. Do you think they're like, we could just do this ourselves?
Yeah, I've always wondered that. And I've seen some parks around the world that have tried to copy what we do. But I think the amount of time, effort, and money that they would have to put into developing what we do, there's no point. And that's the thing. You essentially said there, when you sell the dryers, I typically don't sell them. My company owns probably 95% of them out there. And we revenue share with the parks.
Right.
So we give the equipment to the parks.
You're selling the concept of it to them.
Yes.
Making the space for it. It's a service. It's another revenue stream.
Yeah. It's the fact that it's a guest service where somewhere like, let's just say one of the theme parks, you come off one of those raft rides, you're dripping wet, you're walking through the theme park. The first thing you're going to do is go to the restroom and you're going to pull all the paper towels out. You're going to run the hand dryers. You're going to burn it out. You're going to spill water everywhere. It's going to be a mess in 2 minutes and you don't get dry. And then you walk out and you're miserable. You'll leave the park earlier. You won't be spending on food and beverage. You won't be there enjoying the experience just because you got wet on one of the rides.
Yeah.
So, the concept was and is and continues to be successful in that we put these pieces of equipment into the parks. We insure them, we maintain them, we upgrade them, we monitor them. One of the things I do every day, the first thing I do every morning is I get up, I run my reports, and I look at every piece of equipment in the country. And I look at how much money it made the previous day, whether it's dialing in, whether there's a problem potentially. I'll match that against the previous year's revenue from the year before and the year before that. I'll look for trends to see, okay, was the weather bad? Was the ride down? Was there a maintenance issue somewhere in the park?
Yeah.
And, it's kind of like looking at the Matrix, in the Matrix where they look at the green stuff going up and down. Mm-hmm. Just looking at these numbers, it gives you a picture exactly of what happened at that theme park on that day just by looking at the numbers. And
that's got to be fascinating to look at a report like that on a daily basis. I would actually like to think I'm very right-brained creative and stuff. But as I get older, I become more left-brained, more process-oriented. And for a minute there, overseeing like different moving parts on a screen has kind of become for some reason fascinating to me.
Yeah, and it's so nuanced as well, because you often, if one of my pieces of equipment didn't get used for a day, the typical response would be call them and find out what's going on.
Right.
But then when you factor in, okay, well, what was the weather like in that area? What was the weather like the previous year? You can Google it, or you just kind of give them a little bit of grace of like, okay, maybe the ride was down for the day because the previous day it only took revenue for half of the day, so it looks like they've got a bit of maybe an issue. So you get to know the customer, you get to know their workflow, you get to know who's good, who isn't so good, who needs a nudge, who doesn't need a nudge. Like I said, I love my face-to-face meetings with people, but part of that is I give them all my personal cell phone number. I'm like, you need anything, I may not be checking my email, but when I get a text, my phone pings, I will check that immediately. So 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, text me, whatever the problem is. And that's what they do. And they'll text me and, I'll respond to that immediately and get them up and running again straight away. But if it's, if I'm chasing them, then that's when that personal connection really comes in.
Because you're looking out for their best interests.
Absolutely.
It's them centric, not you.
Correct.
Yeah, and you're kind of in a way alleviating a pain that they have, or making them aware. Hey, just found this thing. I mean, who does that? Are there guys like you that have that same kind of forward-thinking attitude in other parts of the world working for the same company?
Well, we're a very small company.
Yeah.
Essentially, I take care of everything North America, South America, and outside of that, we pretty much only have the owner of the company looking after the rest of the world. Right. So between the two of us, we kind of tackle the front-facing part of the business, and then we have a small team of about half dozen engineers, and they literally spend their lives traveling the world.
Yeah.
Like every day, they're in a different country,
looking at problems, or we're innovating R&Ding the product.
Well, it's more about service and maintenance, really, for us. So, this equipment that we make, pretty much every piece of equipment that's in America that's ever been sold or placed in America, and like I said, we've been here since 2007, is still operating.
Yeah.
And as long as it's being maintained regularly, once a year, we get hands on every piece of equipment once a year minimum. Some places 2, 3, 4 times a year, depending on how busy they are. If it's a high profile customer that has high guest flow and high usage, then I want to make sure that equipment is perfect 365 days of the year. So my team will literally visit every theme park around the world, which sometimes, if let's say Silver Dollar City, for example, is one of my customers. Well, up until recently, a couple of years ago, they closed the airport there. So to get to Silver Dollar City, you either have to drive from Nashville for 6-7 hours, or now fly to Springfield. So it can take you a whole day to send a team of people to get into a theme park, and they're there for 2 or 3 hours. And then they've got to spend a whole day then getting to the next place, and then a whole day getting to the next place. And so when you multiply that by 30-something countries,
that adds up.
It really does, yeah. And with a small team of 5 or 6 traveling engineers, they're exhausted all the time. Their passports, you should see their passports.
I'd imagine.
Yeah.
Not exactly something I'd want to do. Traveling the world like that. The U.S., like if there were a position that came up that the owner of the company gets you an RV, and you just need someone to drive it, I would totally be into it.
I've suggested that before as well. I've said, hey, let's just get a couple of our younger engineers that don't have families at home. Let's just rent them an RV, and they can just travel across the country in that thing. Because they get when they come for me, they come out for about 2 weeks at a time, and I get them 4 or 5 times a year. So I schedule them, do their logistics, get them their parts, get them their workflow, get them their passes, get them everything they need to do. And then I send them off around the country, and then I'm at the other end of the phone in case they need anything, if there are any problems. And often I'll fly out and meet them as well, make sure that they're good, and make sure they're being good to the customers, and vice versa.
So obviously, an amusement park that's got like a log flume is an ideal candidate. Does every amusement park pretty much have that?
Yes, it definitely goes. There's trends. Yeah. So for a while there were water rides were being taken out of parks, and then they went back in again, and then they've kind of been taken out again, and now they're starting to come back in again.
Well, I'm not log flumes, but like the Congo ride in Tampa at Busch Gardens was the one that was the first of its kind, the big round raft.
Oh, I know it very well.
Yeah.
That ride is currently closed.
Really?
It will open again.
Yeah.
They're just waiting on parts.
Okay. But we rode that when it opened, within at least a year or two of when it opened back in the 80s.
Yeah, that is a great ride still.
Yeah.
And then, that's been, I won't say copied, but that concept is used all over the world now. And almost every theme park has a raft ride, a super splash, a log flume, a splash battle, the ones where you sit and you have a cannon and you shoot across to the boat next to you. Splash pads are making a big comeback right now. So zoos and aquariums, theme parks are putting in splash pads, interactive wet play areas. So not a typical ride, but your 5 or 6 year old will go running off and play in the water fountains that are now interactive and themed to be part of the experience.
Yeah.
And then when they leave that area, they're dripping wet, and the parents have suddenly realized that, oh crap.
Yeah.
What do I do with my very unhappy 6 year old who's going to make my life miserable for the rest of the day because they're so unhappy?
Well, my wife and I went to Disney World when we were on our honeymoon, and we went on their version of the big round raft ride. I think it was in Animal Kingdom, I want to say.
That would be Cali River Rapids.
Yeah. And we came off that ride, and you get your legs rubbed together, and you get the rash, which is never fun.
That wet rash or chub rub or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
That's a real thing.
Oh, it sucks.
And I can tell, I've been there and I've watched the guest flow there, and that's the other thing is when I have spare time, not that I have much, but when I have spare time and I'm in the parks, I'll just go and sit and watch the flow of guests and just see what they're doing. That's one of those rides where you watch the people beeline straight for the bathrooms.
Yeah.
And they just drip the whole way there.
Now, on a ride like that, how many of your dryers do they need to accommodate everyone coming off the ride?
Yeah, it depends on how many rafts they have operating, how many people fit into them, because those raft rides can vary from 6 people to 12, 16 people.
Yeah.
But typically, there is a bit of an equation that goes with it, but 2 typically would work for most theme parks with that many wet people.
Right.
But for somewhere like that, I would say 3. So,
oh, wow.
So if you go to Universal Studios in Orlando, for example, in Islands of Adventure, they have 9 of my dryers. So they have 3 on Popeye and Bluto's Build Rat barges. They have a couple on Ripsaw Falls. They have 3 on Jurassic River, River Adventure. Then on the other half of the park, they now have a DreamWorks land with Shrek and Kung Fu Panda. So I've got a couple over there as well. And there may be more things coming, which I can't talk about yet. But there's more stuff happening in that Universal world in Florida at the moment, which is very exciting.
Well, I think it's amazing that what a business model. And it would seem like it's an easy sell because it's like, no, this is completely on us. Just give us the space, and good news, you're going to revenue share with us off of it.
You would think it would be easy. You really would.
It's not like shooting fish in a barrel.
No. Oh my God. I can't explain how it depends, and this, I will say this about, for example, with Universal, I love the team there. They are amazing, and they get the concept, and they get the proven results. I mean, literally they see the proven results. I mean, it's amazing how well those piece of equipment do. But you can be in theme parks and the contract will come up for renewal and they say, yeah, we're not going to do it anymore. And you're like, but why? Like, you make great money. It's a great guest service. And it's generally just because whoever it is that's in charge may not really fully grasp it. Mm-hmm. And educating those people is often the most difficult part of the job.
Are they typically, were they there to begin with, or are they new?
No, new, always new.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I've been having a conversation like this as of today, and a big conversation. There are managers and leaders who will come in, especially if the person they're replacing is somebody that left on their own volition. It wasn't on bad terms or anything. But if that person leaves and then somebody comes in, you're going to get one of two people. The one person is going to be let me find out why the previous person did what they did, what was successful, and how can we improve on it. The second person is going to be, how can I put my thumbprint all over this and make an impact that makes me look good or bad?
And they're typically the people that don't stick around very long.
Right.
You know, the one thing that I've always said about this job is once you're in this industry, you're in it forever. You never leave this industry. And it doesn't matter. Like I was saying, people that I worked with at the London Eye 20 something years ago, I still bump into them at trade shows. I will travel around the country and, you know, one guy that I used to work with at the London Eye is a senior guy for Lego now. And he travels the world working on Lego projects for those theme parks. And he's a great friend of mine. And so I'll just bump into him at trade shows. And once you're really in this industry, you never truly leave it.
Right.
So that's why making those relationships is so important. Yeah. Because you may not particularly like them very well. I mean, actually, I like all of my customers, but there's some that you may not like particularly well, but they're going to be part of your workflow, your job, your industry, you know, until you leave. Yeah. So you've got to make the most of it, and you've got to kind of find some middle ground to be able to work with them, because even if they're not great and they've only just landed into the role, the potential is that they're going to be there for the next 20 years.
Well, you even getting into it had the realization and the foresight to realize this is going to take longer than 6 months, because this is a long sales cycle. First and foremost, we have to introduce the concept. Then they have to consider it for budgeting for the previous year, most likely, if it even makes it on. So you're probably looking at a 1.5 year ramp up period before you possibly even sold your first unit. Is that how?
It was a lot of phone calls, a lot of letters, a lot of emails, a lot of knocking on doors, a lot of no's. I mean, like I said, it's a concept that was brand new here, and trying to get...
It's abstract.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, I think that's one of the big differences between business in America and business the rest of the world as well, is that a lot of these companies that we ended up working with, some of our earlier companies, didn't want to work with us because we were a British company and we had nobody in the US. Right. And they weren't really fully on board just because there wasn't anybody that they could just reach out to and grab. Right. So when I was here and I was knocking on doors and emailing and things, and you tell them, no, I'm in Nashville. You know, I'm somewhat local. I can get you in a couple of hours. Yeah. And that made a huge difference. And, you know, constantly follow up lots of no's, but you just can't take it personally, and you just keep going.
Well, some of those people, it's like a diffusion curve. The law of diffusion, where you got to introduce the concept. You're going to have early adopters. Then that curve starts bending up, and you got more and more people adopting, and then you got a lot more people onboarding, and then you got laggards and things of that nature. But what was that timeline like? When did you all of a sudden realize, okay, we've got something here? How long did it take?
I think it was about 2 years.
Really?
You know,
That's not too bad.
We definitely had traction, and we definitely got out there. We were coast to coast within the first couple of years, but we're talking maybe a dozen pieces of equipment versus hundreds. Right. You know, so it's a dozen pieces of equipment. There was enough to keep the company afloat for the US and turn a profit, you know, just about. And there was enough.
And that's with trade shows and everything going?
Yes. Really? Yeah. Wow. And you just have to have the tenacity to keep going. I remember being at the IAPA trade show one year, and there was a corporate executive who he was in charge of about a dozen theme parks, and I'd been writing to him, calling him, emailing him. I'd spoke to him on the phone a couple of times. I'd explained the concept to him a few times, and I was explaining that this isn't going to cost you $1, but it's going to make you, you know, thousands of dollars.
It's one of the, it sounds too good to be true.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
But because he'd said no in the early days when I first came to him, it was almost saving face, just saying, nope, not interested. Nope, not interested. And I literally watched him walk down the aisle at the trade show, and his boss, the CEO of the company, was with him. And I walked up to him and I introduced myself and I said, hey, you know, this is what I want to do for your theme parks. This is how I'm going to do it. You know, give me a shot. Yeah. And the CEO turned out he was related to the guy, it turned out, but he looked at the guy that I'd been speaking with and just looked at him and said, I don't know why you haven't made it happen. Make it happen. Yeah. And that was it. You know, from that point onwards, we then had a much wider spread in a very short period of time, because it was a lot of theme parks in, you know, a couple of months versus years of grind to get a few. Yeah. And once you're in some of the higher profile places, then it's much easier to get into the smaller
That's proof of concept.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is I work with anybody as well.
Yeah.
You know, it's if there's a way that we can improve a service and everybody kind of makes money and it's cost effective for the customer as well, because we did some research at one of the big theme parks where they were saying they didn't want to put my equipment in because they thought they'd lose t-shirt and towel sales. Mm-hmm. You know, and if you're charging $30 for a towel or $30 for a t-shirt, they think they're going to lose money by somebody spending a couple of dollars to get their family dry. But what we figured out real quick was that those people that are going to spend $30 on a t-shirt and a towel are still going to spend $30 on a t-shirt and a towel. But the 95% of the other guests that aren't going to spend that money, now they have a viable option to get dry and enjoy the rest of their day, or use a service and enjoy the rest of the day. And I've got to tell you, they're fun as well. Like, you get into these machines and you're getting blown at like 80 miles an hour and it's 115 degrees in there. And it's kind of a fun experience for the whole family to get in. And you see people take their shoes off and hold them up in the air and wave them around like they just don't care. You know, they do some fun things in there. And, you know, you're catching those guests that they would otherwise have lost. Mm-hmm. And so adding that as a service, or adding that as a value add to the park, because a wet and miserable 5-year-old won't want to stay wet and miserable for, you know, more than a couple of hours.
Right.
So they're leaving the parks early. And whereas once we have this option of, hey, hop in the dryer, dry off, you know, whatever, carry on about your day, they'll stay till the end of the night. They'll watch the fireworks. Yeah. They'll go eat, you know, hot dogs and popcorn and upsell to a fast pass to go on more rides. And so it keeps more of that revenue in the park, keeps more people on the park all day.
Totally. So the water parks would be, is that something that they've considered for it? I would imagine maybe indoor water parks where you got to trudge your way back to the hotel room, you know?
Yeah, we absolutely work with the water parks as well. Yeah. And, you know, the closest water park to us right here is Soundwaves, and they have one of my dryers in there as well.
Oh, nice.
They actually own theirs, and they operate theirs under free vend. So they offer it as a guest service so that it's for free for their guests, but also it means that they're not using towels.
Yeah.
So every time a guest grabs a towel will cost a hotel, resort, theme park, whatever. It will cost them 50 cents to wash, launder, manual handle that towel. Plus it puts chemicals into the water stream for the detergents. Then the electricity to do the washing and the drying of that single towel. You know, we did a study on it, and it is about between 50 and 60 cents for each person that uses the towel, for each one towel. Whereas at somewhere like a water park resort, if it's for free, I mean, people still pay to use them there, but if it's for free, they're saving, you know, could be 4 or 5 towels per time it's being used. It uses a couple of cents for the energy to use my dryer. The resort is saving manual handling. They're saving huge amounts of money on laundry costs. There's less theft of the laundry as well, because people like to steal towels for some reason. So it kind of works for them as okay, we buy it this one time. These people are available to us to help us with maintenance if we need it, but we're going to save an absolute fortune on towels and have a service that's fun. Nice. So that's in a resort that buys their equipment. Now, if it's a revenue share, yes, I still work in the water parks. Water parks are interesting. People go expecting to be wet.
Yeah.
So they spend their entire day wet, and it's when they leave.
They're bringing towels with them and stuff.
Bringing towels with them, but then by the end of the day, their towels may be wet already because they've been laying on them all day, or there may not be any towels left in the free towel bins or whatever, but they're about to leave. They're about to get in their cars. They're about to walk down the hotel to get to their rooms, and they don't want to be wet for that transitional period. So that's when they'll hop into the equipment. So I'd say that the majority of our business is definitely in the theme parks.
Yeah.
But then there are zoos and aquariums, for example. They're huge at the moment. We're installing dryers all the time in zoos and aquariums because they're putting in splash pads as a way to expand on the offerings of the zoos.
The people that sit in the front row.
People that sit, well, yes, yeah, that's the splash zone for sure. But you go to, we've done a couple this year actually where they've now put in these really beautiful themed areas, very conservation friendly areas, and then the kids run through there and they get sprayed with water, and then they come out the other side. And we could be in Nebraska, for example, where it suddenly gets cold at night, and how do you then warm the kids up?
Yeah,
throw them in a dryer.
How many times a day on average do these, like one dryer, get used?
It definitely depends. I will tell you, it's probably easier to tell you per hour.
Yeah.
So it can be anything from a couple of uses per hour to about 20 uses per hour.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, because each time it's about 3 minutes per time. So actually the real numbers are it's about 18 uses per hour when they're in maximum use.
Right.
And I moved away from the cash to pay model a few years ago, and COVID really helped me with that because nobody wanted to handle cash anymore, which is great for me. Like there's nothing worse than having to fix a bill validator. Like you have to fly to a theme park just to clear a wet bill from the bill validator that's just all jammed up, or someone shoved a leaf in or a sticker, or you know, it's so asinine. Like there's no need for it. So we moved to generally a credit or contactless vending model, which then meant that on the back end I could monitor remotely. So rather than having to worry, hey, this machine's not working. Why is it not working? Oh, it's just not working. I'll fly and have a look at it. And I realize, well, it's stuffed full of cash and it can't accept any more cash. Why did you not empty the cash? Yeah. And that happens. Yeah. So moving away from that then meant that there's no wet bills going into the machine. Somebody taps their card, it turns on instantly. And the time to perform a transaction has gone down from what was typically 30 to 40 seconds of people feeding wet money in and out down to 2 or 3 seconds.
Wow.
So, you know, I'm increasing the number of uses that I can get per hour, which then you extrapolate that per day, per week, per month. You know, that's a big difference.
You guys need to start adopting crypto payments. Serious. I'm dead serious, man.
I'm late to that boat, and
I know.
And
I mean, it's starting to, it's like, talk about diffusion curves. You know, we're hockey sticking in crypto right now.
Man, I was sitting on a beach once, and the guy that was sat next to me on the beach, I'm talking probably 10 years ago now, and the guy sat next to me on the beach, it's crypto. You got to buy crypto. This is what it costs right now. I guarantee. Bought it then. And I told the guy, like,
you're
thanks,
on your
dude.
mind.
Appreciate what you're saying, but I'm not interested. And then a few years later, when I looked at it, I was like, holy crap.
Dude, that happened to me too.
Really?
But I mean, that was, I was working for Mercedes at the time, and I heard about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin especially, because that was the leader, still is. And it was one of those things it was like, I have no idea what this is, but something's telling me it's going to be big. If not now, probably half a decade to a decade from now. And I mean, Bitcoin at that point was, I don't know, a couple bucks, hardly anything. And at the time I was so scarcity minded that if I had spent $100 on it, I would have been more scared of losing the $100. That's how tight we were with funds, getting into a new business and doing what I was doing with car sales. But my goodness. But then again, also, I don't even know how to buy it. How the hell do you buy this stuff?
Well, and then you hear these stories, and again, I buried my head in the sand on this whole thing.
Right.
And then you hear the people that have, you know, was it crypto or Bitcoin on a USB stick that they've lost?
They forgot.
And there's like a USB stick out there floating around that's worth $4 billion.
Right.
And the guy's like killing himself because he can't find it.
Yep.
And you hear that stuff, and then you get all of then it was the NFTs, wasn't it? Everyone was into NFTs.
NFTs. It's almost like the technology shift in the last 15 years has been so profound. Like if you look at podcasts, right? Podcasts came about in 06, 07 with the advent of the iPhone. That's why they call it a podcast. It was actually from the iPod, so it was podcast. And they kind of had a little bit of a rise, and I was still in radio at the time, and we kind of scoffed and laughed at podcasts. Like, okay, look, you know, you go play in your playground. They went away for a minute, and all of a sudden they came back with a vengeance. So I got out of my radio business my radio career in 2013, thinking that my skill set, I don't know what else I'm going to do with this, you know, as far as doing recordings and radio type things and voiceover. I still did a lot of video production, but when it came to like producing the audio, I did the imaging for radio stations and stuff. Who's going to need this? It's in more demand than I've ever known right now. What I'm able to do.
It's such a niche thing as well. I feel like the traditional delivery methods of entertainment has completely changed and will continue to change. So, you know, when it comes to network TV, for example, I mean, that's dead. I don't even have any way of watching cable anymore. I have
Radio's
no cable.
the same way.
The same with radio.
Yeah.
Now, I will listen to podcasts almost exclusively when I'm traveling or in the car.
Yeah.
When I'm home, I play vinyl just because analog. I want that analog connection to the music. I love vinyl. I'll play vinyl. But when I'm traveling, it's just podcasts, or I don't watch TV. I watch YouTube. Because you can get exactly what you want, and there are so many people out there that are making it, and it cuts all of the BS out for the working for the corporate overlords. It's so accessible. You can get exactly what you want, and you can find the good personalities. And when you find those personalities, you find something you like, you find that niche, and then there's always something a little bit different, and then you can expand your horizons a little more. And I feel like we're in a golden age right now.
We are. It's definitely a wild, wild west of sorts. Not especially with digital media, podcasts. But back to your point about NFTs, the point I was going to make was that they had a little bit of a false start, and they're it's kind of subsided at the moment. But I'm wondering if we're just gearing up for a monstrous, roaring comeback of NFTs.
Yeah,
because people don't understand what they are. This right now. Crypto is the internet circa 1996, 97. I literally remember my parents used to camp a lot. I was maybe about 14 or 15 years old. We used to go to all these different campgrounds around the country, and I would always seek out. We'd land, get all hooked up, settle ourselves. I'd get on my bike and find the playground, find what other kids were out there and stuff. Girls, of course. And there was this one guy that was there. We were just hanging around, and we got talking. He goes, "Hey, I had to get back, but if I don't see you again, what's your electronic mail address?" I go, 2 Terry Weil Lake Drive. My address is, dude, I don't know what you're talking about. This is like 89, 90. I had no idea. This kid was 7 years early on email. Imagine being that early. Isn't that nuts? Because Bitcoin, I think, came about in 08.
But then, like just what's happening the last couple of weeks with that, like Hawk Tour girl, whatever it is,
there's issues,
Yeah, and then everyone seems to be launching their own cryptocurrency, and so again, to those of us that aren't already on board, and I have very little interest in it. I probably should, but I have very little interest in it. And when you see these things, or you read about them, or you hear the stories or whatever, you're just like, all right, I like dollars in my pocket. Yeah.
But I mean, everybody thought that at one time the internet was like, okay, that's fun. It's a nice little fad. Now it's like everything revolves. You better be online. You better have Wi-Fi. You're walking around with a computer that can access the entire world's, existence and knowledge since the beginning of time on your person. Who would ever saw that coming? Steve Jobs did, obviously.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying that I've just been telling people, I said, I just think as soon as you see it on Amazon that you can pay with Bitcoin, game over. Game over.
I think for my industry as well is I'll follow the trends and what the market demands. So, I was trying to get the customers to go cashless for a long time. Yeah. And then literally 2020 happened. They all called me and said, "Oh, we need to be cashless. Can we do that?" And I'm like, hallelujah. Yeah, let's do it. Let's hop on that.
As the dollar, just nosedives in value, thanks to all the printing they did in COVID, the biggest amount of printing they've done ever. I think 85% of the cash United States dollar was printed in 2020 and 2021. 85%.
But I look back to when I first moved to the States, it was essentially 2-to-1 for dollar to the pound.
Yeah.
And now it's 125, 130 to the pound. So the dollar is far stronger now than it was in 2006, 2007 when I was moving here. And so when I hear people talk about, it's the value of the dollar has plummeted, it may have, but then you look around the rest of the world and so is everything else. Yeah. So, it's kind of swings and roundabouts, and actually we're probably better off here than we were, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago.
It'll be curious to see what happens post January 20th, after the inauguration, because he's trying to be more crypto friendly, even making an appearance here in Nashville back in August at the Bitcoin crypto conference. Which was one of the biggest ones in the world. He actually showed up and spoke. So,
yeah,
I don't know. It's just interesting. Am I invested? Maybe.
Do you have a reason for it to be successful? Maybe.
I don't know. I'm just saying that I'm wondering if we're looking at, people just don't understand it yet. So internet 96, 97, they knew about it. I don't know what I'd do on it. I don't want to give my credit card. That sounds scary. And then, yielded way to PayPal and, making
which is
paying.
That's what made Elon Musk, of course.
Right.
And then, the rest is history.
Oh, yeah.
And future, apparently.
It's crazy, man. It's a crazy times in which we live. It'd be curious to see if you gave that just as an option for people to pay. And hey, if you're getting paid in Bitcoin and someday it's worth $1 million a coin, who's complaining?
Well, what's interesting about that is, the US in general, and, to all of the Middle Tennessee listeners, I love it here. I'm a citizen. I've been here for the majority of my life now. I've been here. But technology-wise, the US generally seems to be behind the curve. So, for example, the cell phones that I had in the UK in the early 2000s were far beyond what you guys had here. Yeah. Internet connectivity was much greater, pretty much the rest of the world, than it was here. It was a real culture shock to me to come here and be in such what I perceived as being the world leaders in technology, and realize that actually, the cell phone that I could buy from the store here was I had 6 years before back in the UK. Yeah. So I think as technology and concepts like Bitcoin, I mean, the rest of the world, we use, for example, our Asia market, we use WeChat Pay and all these other essentially social media payment methods or QR codes that they use to pay. Yeah. There are so many more varied methods to pay everywhere else, whereas here it's either cash, credit, debit. That's pretty much it.
Well, think about the generations coming up, my kids. I mean, they'd rather be paid in V-Bucks
or Venmo. Or, yeah.
I mean, whatever currency exists in the game they like, just buy me V-Bucks. I don't care about dollars. And it's like one of those things you go, I'm paying attention to that, because they're going to be the ones they're going to get used to all this. My son used to make fun of me because of my crypto. I listened to a crypto podcast. I bought my first crypto in 2018. It was jumping through a few hoops to do it, that's for sure. But my goodness, he's like, so how do I buy Doge? He's coming around. He's 16.
So
I think it's funny.
Do you think he's going to make money doing that? Like, okay, so let me ask you this: if I was to ask you one piece of advice, if I've got $1,000, what do I go buy? Or how do I buy it? And what do you think that'll be worth in 5 years' time?
As far as crypto?
Yeah, or any of that.
I mean, just $1,000, that's it.
I mean, listen, I'm just finishing off a real heavy divorce.
Right.
So finding 1,000 might be a stretch. I'll sell you my watch. How about that?
If you were continuously investing something, I would say, buy the fractional pieces, what they call as Satoshis of Bitcoin. Or you can do, I would certainly suggest, think of it like Yahoo, or some of the other competing exchanges back then. You had, Gmail wasn't a thing back then quite yet. Google was just kind of bubbling up.
You had AOL and
Yahoo, those types of players. I feel like we're in that season. You've got Ethereum. You've got, certainly now Doge is becoming a player because of.
Isn't that Elon Musk's one?
It is. Thing? Yeah, it's what they call a meme coin. I believe that's what it is, or an ish coin.
Forgive me for kind of chuckling to myself with this whole thing of, yes, please tell me to spend $1,000 on a fraction of a coin of a picture of a dog that isn't actually worth anything.
Doge, you'll be able to get at least 500 coins. I think that Doge is about 40 or 50 cents a coin. So,
okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, something like that's got, if you want to start doing day trading of that kind of stuff and ratcheting it up, timing the market, you could certainly track the ones that drop in value because inevitably they're going to, probably pop back up. And if you do that a couple of times, 5 to 10% fluctuations, buy, sell, you can ratchet it up and turn 1,000 into 10,000 in probably a month, I would think.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. It's just not my bag, and I'm gonna listen back to this podcast in like a year, 2 years, 3 years.
Maybe I'll just be the fool. Who knows?
That's what I'm saying. Like, this is why I like analog things in every aspect of my life. Because I was born in the 70s, and I was the generation like you. Yeah. We had no internet growing up. We had no.
You rode your bikes.
Rode our bikes uphill both ways.
That's right.
We had no color TV when I was.
You hurt yourself. You rubbed dirt on it. Drank out of the garden hose.
We literally did all those things. Yeah. There was no health and safety. There was none. We all survived, and we can adapt. I will say that for our generation is that we had to adapt to the internet came when we were.
We were last. I want to say, dare I say, a last of a dying breed.
Oh, absolutely.
Of a certain generation of vigor and grit. Not to say that the following generations, it's just they're more bent toward a technological aspect, by proxy of growing up with the technology. I mean, we were the transitioning generation that, the internet was a brand new concept. Now you got people, they just grew up with it. That's nuts to think about that.
I saw a clip online this morning, which is the irony of me seeing this online, of it was like a dance party in the early 2000s, and it's like one of these spring break things. There's about 1,000 people in the field, and they're just like dancing around to music, and they're just talking to each other, and the caption was "Life before screens."
Yeah,
and I was like, yeah, that was a great time.
It was.
That was amazing, and sadly, most people will never know that again.
You'd be surprised. I think there's a I'm a big believer in pendulum theory, that societies go from one extreme to the other over a course of time. It's actually that book right there behind me, Pendulum. I talk about it often on the podcast, and we're basically past the most tumultuous point of the pendulum swing. So 2023 should have looked like 1943 all over again. The only thing we're missing is a big bloody calamity.
Wow.
So,
yes. Isn't that? Yay. Let's look forward to that.
I know.
But again, I think that's why, if you grew up in a generation where you didn't have those things, we almost pine for them, because we look back with rose-colored glasses and we say, oh, that was the best time. I can't imagine being a kid today growing up with social media. I can't imagine, the cyberbullying. I can't imagine, all of these things. I mean, we also grew up in a time that was very different to our parents and our grandparents.
Sure.
I think if a pendulum does swing back and it moves back away from technology again, I wonder how the generations behind us would cope with the lack of the technology, whereas I embrace it. Like I said, I try to unplug as much as possible now.
Yeah.
Didn't used to be that way, but now, I love being unplugged from technology completely. And it's so freeing just for, even if it's for a couple of hours a week, it's just such a wonderful experience to get back to go for a walk, take your dogs for a walk, put on vinyl, go make something with your hands. That's one of my favorite things to do. All of my hobbies, I make stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's something tangible, physical, you get your hands on it, and it just enriches the soul in a way that staring at a screen doesn't.
Well, the thing is, and my mother-in-law is very particular about this. She doesn't like the screens either. And I always say, and she, to her credit, even television being on is somewhat of a detriment. So it's probably a bad example, but a lot of people in that generation, even in our generation, that see what our kids are doing, it's like, this is no different than us sitting down in front of a television, something occupying our time, entertaining us. We used to invite our buddies over to play video games on a screen. That was something we did. And Nintendo Entertainment System came out.
Super Mario and Duck Hunt.
Yeah.
Bundle pack all day long.
After school, hey, you coming over? We're going to play some Sega or Nintendo, and that kind of evolved into what it is today. I mean, we just finished watching a whole documentary on Madden, the video game, and how that evolved over years from the early 90s. And how many people said, like, it brought families together because of that competitive nature. They couldn't play the game like these pros, but you could pretend to be the pro in that amount of time on a video game, and make the Eagles into a Super Bowl team or whatever. That was something that kind of brought people together. I'm still optimistic with things like that. Kids aren't getting outside to play anymore, which it should happen. And as parents, we should probably be more on top of it. But at the same time, they're hanging out with each other online. They're just playing games and they're doing basically the same thing.
And that's a big cultural difference between the US and the UK as well. In the UK, you walk everywhere.
Yeah.
But we didn't have, here you do a great job here in the US of after school clubs. Everyone has an interest. Everyone has a club. Everyone has a sport they play. Everybody goes to a church group. Everybody has, something they're into. Maybe it's Marvel or something.
Yeah.
They have something they're into that there is a club for. In the UK, there's none of that. Or certainly when I was growing up. And I'm pretty sure even to this day, there's still none of that. So you leave school at 4 p.m. and you go home, you grab, you either now sit and play video games, or when I was growing up, you would go outside and you would literally just walk around the streets and hang out on street corners with your friends, and you would you get up to mischief. I mean,
yeah,
I can't tell you the amount of times that we made rocket launchers out of poster tubes and threw fireworks into them and hid in bushes and wait for our friends to come outside, and we would launch them each. If even now, if my parents are listening, sorry. But the stuff that you'd get up to, and I was a great kid, like I was a really well-behaved kid, and I can't imagine seeing kids today doing what we were doing. But that type stuff in the UK still goes on. I think it goes on less here because you have such good organized activities.
Other activities and distractions.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for us and my family, I could say, well, we are certainly as parents in this generation responsible for how our kids are raised up and how they turn out. But at the same time, I have a stay-at-home. My wife stays home with the kids and has always. So a lot of pressure on me to bring the bread home and make sure it's buttered and all that fun stuff. That also is a cultural shift. And I think a lot of parents are feeling that because I think it's tougher than ever to make ends meet, for a lot of people. If you're not entrepreneurial minded, even when you are, in the last, leading up to 2020, 2021, it was a good time to be an entrepreneur. It was popular, which means that a lot of people shouldn't have been doing it, most likely, which when times turn bad, then it shakes off all the posers, the wannabes, but it leaves the people that are still like, okay, it's tough. And that occupies a lot of your time to the point where you're just exhausted. Even taking care of yourself gets put aside.
Oh, absolutely. I can't agree with that more. I mean, that's taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
It should be a priority, but it generally gets pushed to the bottom of the list.
Right. Because you're so busy just trying to stay above water, and have margin in your life.
Plus, I grew up, my parents had, my dad was a contractor. He owned his own electrical contractors company. He was one-man band, and he ended up having a whole team of people working for him. But I would never see him.
Yeah.
And, and the same with my mum, like she would work 5-6 jobs just to bring the money home. She would clean houses, she would make clothes, she would work in cafes, she would do all kinds of interesting or weird jobs. I think even the last job she had, she was grooming dogs.
Yeah.
But you put that the goal or the need of bringing money in to provide for the family comes first, and then looking after yourself and those relationships with your family kind of comes second.
Yeah.
I do feel like there's a change. There's a shift now. It's much more, people are much more family centric as far as I can't come to work today because I can't work overtime. Yeah, I'm doing this or I'm doing that. I have other priorities. That's not a bad thing.
No.
It's just not what I grew up with.
Right. The influencers out there, or wannabe influencers, some of them local here even, lately I've been like going on this body shaming bent that if you're not in shape, people take you less seriously. And it's like, while I don't disagree with you, but you're sounding tone deaf when you say that because you don't get it. You don't understand. Last 2 years have been very difficult for a lot of people, us included. It's been a very trying time. And it's not that we're trying to harp on it, but I guess if I were to say something to those people that are out there trying to, flex their muscles and show up, if you're not looking like this, no one's going to shut up. You know what I mean? There are people out there that look 800 times worse than I do that are crushing it. It all depends on what falls out of your mouth. And I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but
it's priorities, and it's so one of my favorite like channels online that I follow is Daily Driven Exotics car channel, DDE. They're DDE for life. Those guys, I love those guys. And actually, I'm when I make stuff, I very rarely keep the stuff I make, and like a lot of the stuff. If you watch their channels, watch their videos on YouTube, a lot of the stuff that they have on the screen is stuff that I've made, and I've just sent them just because I want to give this stuff away. And it's like when I watch their channel every day, I'm like, oh, I made that.
Yeah.
But the main guy from that is just on a health kick at the moment. And the saying that really stuck with me is discipline over motivation. So if you're disciplined, you don't need to be motivated.
Right.
And although the last couple of years have been very difficult for me personally and very difficult for me physically as well, just having that discipline to get up and try and do some kind of exercise every day,
right.
Try and do something. It gives you that, it almost gives me a free pass to drown out those people that say, you should be doing this and you should be doing that. I'm like, well, look, I'm doing my thing and I have the discipline to do it and I have the dedication to do it.
Yeah.
So, whatever it is that you're kind of, trying to get me to follow, I'm not really that interested.
And that's what I'm saying is that I think a lot of it's coming off as tone deaf. This one particular post that I came across actually inspired me to write like a whole essay that I was going to release on LinkedIn. But after reading, I'm like, it's, what's the point of this? You know what I mean? I'm better speaking it than writing it. And I guess what I mean to say is if you've created a life that you can allot time to do this, awesome for you. You've obviously done something way better than I did because I'm still trying to figure it out. With that being said, though, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I realize I'm not exactly in the best shape I've ever, that I could do better. I don't need to be reminded of it. I remind myself every day because I'm disciplining myself to get up and put one foot forward and the best foot forward I can to innovate this company to sustainability and then not profitability, but, just an abundance mindset, And there are a lot of people out there that are feeling that. And I talk to a lot of people who are, they think the same way. There's almost like an entrepreneurial wannabe bubble that's about to burst with all these guys that are trying to be influential and everything. I feel like it's going to burst because people need to hear that it's okay. We know you're struggling. Just just do it again tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Do it again tomorrow. It's a valley, you're going to, hopefully we're through the bottom of the valley. Maybe we're starting to ascend towards the mountaintop again.
I think everybody seems to be suffering with anxiety now as well, which me included, absolutely suffer with anxiety. And I think part of that, I was always a fat kid and I was a fat young adult and I can be fat whenever I want. I can balloon to 300 pounds easily. And I find that just by setting aside 20 minutes of my day, at least 5 days a week, maybe more, but generally at least 5 days a week, whether it's a core workout or I get on the rowing machine or I get on a bike or something. I have a rowing machine and a bike at my house. Best investment I made right as COVID happened. I had already ordered them and I was like, that's amazing timing. And I got to continue doing that from home. But for me, I do it less about the fact that I want to look good, but for me, it's about doing that workout in the morning. I'll get up 20 minutes early to do it. It's just an anxiety thing. And on days I don't do it, I don't enjoy my days as much. Yeah. So those 20 minutes, if I burn those 20 minutes in the morning, I don't see that as wasted time. I don't see it as, I'm getting buff. I see it as, I'm calming the nerves. And then for the rest of the day, I'm good to go.
Right.
And it depends what's your motivation to do it. And if your motivation is, I want to be buff and I want to shame everybody else that isn't, you can keep walking. I'm not interested.
I feel like there's like a set of dip switches in everybody's brain. And something, when I was 23, 24 years old, something pushed one of those switches that made me, I'm like, okay, I'm going to get in shape. And I made it happen. But I was 23, 24 years old. And I was in radio and I worked nights. So again, I'm not making excuses, but I'm realistic about the scenario that I was in. So I could get up. I was up around, 7:00 in the morning. I don't know, probably have a cup of coffee or whatever. I'd kind of roll into the gym around 9:30, do my workout, took my time, enjoyed it. Actually, I think in the morning I was preparing my meals because that took a lot of time. And then getting back home, having my first meal of the day, which was probably like egg whites or something like that. Yeah, the weight came right off me and I was building up muscle. But as soon as I moved to a regular shift where I had to be in the morning and I was done, It all went out the window. Because,
why do you think that is then? Because there is
it was
same number of hours in the day.
It was just a matter of how it made sense for me.
Okay.
And even now, like, yeah, I like every time it's usually around 10 o'clock, I'm like, yeah, this would be a good time for me just to work out. I feel good right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that's what I'm working towards is to get to that again, and you're right. Getting up and getting past the first 2 minutes of a workout is the biggest key.
Oh,
getting into your mindset, just getting moving, and that first minute, 2 minutes, and once you're past that 2 minutes, okay, I'm in. We're good.
Honestly, and that whole thing about it's discipline over motivation.
Yeah,
I don't give myself a choice.
Yeah,
I'm like, well, you're doing 20-minute workout today, whether you like it or not, and it's non-negotiable. It's the same as breathing. It's the same as going to the bathroom. Yeah. You're gonna do it. You may as well just do it and try to enjoy it. And I was very much on the still am really on the Peloton bandwagon, because when you're doing those classes, you don't even really realize you're doing a class because they're somewhat amusing.
Right.
And afterwards, it's the little things that brighten my day that make doing the workouts easier. And I'll give you an example. If I don't do a workout, I'll put on sports socks, because then I'm thinking, well, maybe later I'll do a workout and then I'm already wearing the socks. And then at the end of the day, I'll take those socks off and I'll be miserable. I'm like, I didn't do a workout. I'll let myself down. But if I do a workout in the morning, once I'm done and I've got out of the shower, I'll put on dress socks or, just regular socks. And putting those socks on is like an achievement. It's like, wow, I
did something.
I did something today. I haven't got to worry about the sports socks again. And it's something so ridiculous, but it absolutely brightens my day.
Everybody has that internal voice, right? And this is something Brad Lee talks about. And I never realized it until he brought it up. I go through that same kind of mindset too. I'll just do it when I get home from work. The voice says, no, you won't. Pay attention to the pronouns it uses. It doesn't say, no, I won't. It says, no, you won't. And I'm wondering, that's external.
Wow. I feel like I need to give Courtney way more props now, because it sounds like there's a lot of people living in that head.
Probably. But literally, I'll say, I probably when I get home, I'll just, get on the bench and pick up the weights. And literally within a second of that, I hear, no, you won't. And you know it.
Oh, if I get past 7 a.m. and I haven't started, I typically 7 a.m. is my goal. If I haven't started my workout by 7 a.m., I know I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
So, and again, of that generation where I don't even have an alarm clock.
Yeah.
I'm awake at 5:30 in the morning. I drink a couple of cups of coffee, watch the news.
Right.
And then I have that. All right, it's 2 minutes to 7. I better get my ass out of bed and on the treadmill.
Right.
Or on the rowing machine or on the bike. And that's exactly what I do.
Well, moving forward, how do people find and follow you and discover your dryers? And what are you looking to do in the next couple of years?
Okay. Well, I'm on LinkedIn, so you just find me on as Wayne Jacks on LinkedIn.
It's JACKS.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
On Instagram, I'm the Crafty Brit. So _crafty Brit. And other than that, Haystack Dryers, you can find us at www.haystack-dryers.com.
There you
go. And of course, you can email me if anyone wants to. It's wayne@haystackdryers.com. But yeah, no, the next couple of years, we've got, as a business, we have a lot of new parks opening in the country, which is a very exciting time for theme parks in the US. There's a big merger that just completed, and so Six Flags and Cedar Fair have just merged, and there's all kinds of interesting things that are going on there. They've just announced billions of dollars worth of investment into the park, so there's going to be a lot of improvements out there. Same with Universal. They have a new theme park, first new theme park, certainly of that scale in 20-something years, opening in Orlando in a couple of weeks' time.
Wow.
So there's a lot of stuff out there in the theme park industry, if you're interested, that's happening, that's coming up, which is really quite exciting. Outside of that, I'm just surviving. It goes. Yeah. It's you and I both know how life can be sometimes, and the last couple of years, like I mentioned, have been an interesting couple of years, and I'm excited for what the future is going to bring. So, let's roll on and see.
Keep on keeping on, man.
Absolutely, that's what it's about.
Well, there you go. As always, the information will be in the description. So if you want to reach out to Wayne, please do. And of course, follow us, find us. You've already found us, so you don't need to find us. But if you want somebody else to find us, send them to MMTBP.com. All the information is there. Of course, if you want to be a guest on the show or you think somebody needs to be a guest, there's a link where they can fill out a form. It gets sent directly to me. I take a look at it, and literally, probably 9 times out of 10, they're going to be a guest. So all those things are right there, mmtbp.com. Wayne, always a pleasure, my friend.